I'm Natalie Whitmore, 47 years old, and I spent 19 years helping build my father's manufacturing company from a small regional operation into a business that employed over 200 people. I wasn't a figurehead. I handled operations, vendor negotiations, and crisis management, the unglamorous work that keeps a company alive. Which is why the day my own brothers voted me out of the company, I knew this wasn't just betrayal. It was a mistake they were going to regret. Thank you for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop a comment below. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell so you never miss the next one. Every share helps these stories reach someone who needs to hear them. Let's keep the conversation going. I sat at the board table, watching my brothers slide papers across the polished wood like weapons. Harrison's face was stone. Marcus wouldn't meet my eyes. We're calling for a vote, Harrison said, his voice flat. Regarding Natalie's position as COO. My stomach dropped. 3 hands went up. Mine stayed frozen in my lap. It didn't matter anyway. 3 against 1. The vote passed. I was officially removed from Dad's company. By my own blood. They didn't even try to hide their satisfaction. Harrison gathered the papers with careful precision. Marcus finally looked at me, something like guilt flickering across his face before he looked away. I didn't cry, didn't scream. I just sat there, watching them close the folder that held my termination. Then I noticed something. Mom's chair was empty. She hadn't attended this meeting. And suddenly, that felt intentional. They escorted me out like I'd stolen something. Harrison walked ahead, not looking back. Marcus trailed behind, hands in his pockets. The office had gone silent. Every desk, every cubicle. People stared at their screens, pretending not to watch. Julie from accounting had tears in her eyes. Tom from logistics looked furious. But nobody spoke. Nobody defended me. As we reached the lobby, Harrison finally turned. You were never built for this, Natalie, he said quietly. Dad just felt sorry for you. The words landed like a slap. I grabbed my box of personal items and walked out into the parking lot, my hands shaking so hard I nearly dropped everything. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, staring at the building Dad had poured his life into. That night, my phone rang. Mom's name flashed on the screen. Her voice was calm, measured, intentional. Come over tomorrow morning, she said. Bring the shareholder documents. I arrived at Mom's house at 8. She was already at the kitchen table, coffee steaming in front of her, reading glasses perched on her nose. I sat down heavily, exhausted from a sleepless night. Tell me exactly what happened, she said. So I did. Every word, every vote, every cold, calculated moment. Mom listened without interrupting, her expression unreadable. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. Then she asked one question. Did they read the shareholder agreement? My stomach dropped. I'd been so focused on the betrayal, I hadn't thought about the mechanics. The legal structure. The ownership percentages. I don't think so, I whispered. Mom nodded slowly, something dangerous flickering in her eyes. Good, she said. Then she stood and walked to her office, returning with a thick manila folder. She laid it on the table between us. Read page 7. My hands trembled as I opened the folder. The shareholder agreement was dated 3 months after Dad's funeral, 2 years ago. I scanned the pages until I reached page 7. Then I stopped breathing. Charlotte Whitmore, 51% ownership. My mother. Not my brothers. Not split evenly. She owned the controlling share. She had always owned it. You never transferred it, I said, my voice barely a whisper. No, Mom replied simply. Your father and I built this company together. When he died, I kept what was mine. Your brothers assumed I'd handed everything over in grief. I let them assume. I looked up at her, realization crashing over me. My brothers hadn't just betrayed me. They'd miscalculated. Badly. Mom sat down, folding her hands calmly. But we don't rush, Natalie, she said, her voice like steel wrapped in silk. We let them hang themselves first. The next 2 weeks were agony. I stayed silent. Didn't fight back. Didn't make phone calls or send angry emails. Mom insisted. Let them feel safe, she'd said. Let them think they've won. So I watched from a distance as my brothers celebrated. Harrison posted on LinkedIn about exciting new leadership transitions. Marcus gave an interview to the local business journal, talking about fresh vision and modernizing operations. They made changes immediately. Aggressive ones. Risky ones. They cut 3 vendor contracts Dad had maintained for 15 years. They pushed marketing budgets into flashy campaigns that looked good on paper but had no substance. The staff was rattled. I heard about it through quiet messages, former colleagues reaching out, asking if I knew what was happening. I didn't respond, but I listened. And then one afternoon my phone rang. A longtime client. His voice was tense. Worried. "Natalie," he said. "I need to ask you something off the record." I gripped the phone tighter. "Go ahead, Mr. Brennan." He hesitated. "Your brothers just renegotiated our contract. They're cutting corners your father never would have touched. Cheaper materials. Faster timelines. I'm uncomfortable." My chest tightened. "Did you tell them that?" "I tried," he said. "They brushed me off. Said I was being old-fashioned. I'm calling you because your dad trusted you. Did you know about this?" I took a breath. "No, Mr. Brennan. I didn't." There was a long pause. "That's what I thought," he said quietly. "Thank you for being honest." He hung up. I sat there staring at my phone. Then that same week, another client called. Then another. They weren't angry yet. Just uneasy. Uncertain. And they all asked the same question. Did I know what my brothers were doing? Word spread quietly. No lawsuits. No public complaints. Just a slow, uncomfortable shift in how people talked about the company. Vendors who'd worked with us for years started hesitating on renewals. A supplier mentioned to someone who mentioned to me that Harrison had been difficult in negotiations. Another said Marcus seemed more interested in optics than outcomes. It was all whispers. Subtle. The kind of reputational bleed that doesn't show up in quarterly reports but kills a business slowly. My brothers didn't notice yet. They were too busy celebrating their newfound control, announcing bold initiatives and 5-year plans. Then, in early November, they called a press conference. Harrison stood at a podium, Marcus beside him, and announced an aggressive expansion plan. New facilities. New markets. New debt. I watched the live stream from my living room, my stomach churning. Mom sat beside me, her face calm. "They're doing exactly what I thought they would," she said quietly. 2 days after the press conference, Mom sent a formal letter to the company's legal counsel. It was simple, professional, and completely within her rights as majority shareholder. She requested a full financial review. Every contract, every expense, every decision made since Dad's death. Harrison called her that night. I was there when she answered, putting him on speaker. "Mom, what is this?" he demanded. "A review," she said calmly. "I'm entitled to one. You don't trust us?" His voice was tight, defensive. "I didn't say that," Mom replied. "But I do want transparency. Your father would have wanted the same." Harrison left. It sounded forced. "This is unnecessary. Everything's fine. Then the review will confirm that," Mom said. "Won't it?" He hung up without answering. Mom set down her phone and looked at me. "They're rattled," she said. And she was right. Because the numbers didn't match their confidence. The independent auditor started asking questions in mid-November. I wasn't involved directly, but I heard things. Whispers from staff who were interviewed. Questions about expense reports. Side deals. Vendor kickbacks. Nothing illegal, but ethically murky. The auditor requested documentation for decisions my brothers had made without board approval. Shortcuts they'd taken. Contracts they'd signed in haste. Harrison tried to control the narrative, sending cheerful emails about routine financial housekeeping. But people weren't stupid. They could feel the tension. Then the bank started asking questions too. The expansion plan required significant loans. The bank wanted to see stability, consistency, a track record of sound decision-making. Instead, they found chaos. Vendor complaints. Client uncertainty. Internal turnover. By early December, the loan approval was delayed, then delayed again. My brothers began to panic. And that's when I got the call. It was Marcus. His voice was strained, careful. Natalie, we'd like you to come back. I was silent for a long moment. As what? I asked. A consultant, he said quickly. Just temporarily. To help smooth things over with some of the clients. You have relationships we could use your expertise. I almost laughed. Weeks ago, I wasn't built for this. Now I was an expert. I'll have to think about it, I said. Natalie, please, I hung up. That afternoon, Mom called me. They reached out to you, didn't they? How did you know? I asked. She smiled. I could hear it in her voice. Because I just scheduled a formal shareholder meeting for December 20th. They're terrified. My heart pounded. What happens at the meeting? Everything, Mom said simply. Behind closed doors, my brothers were falling apart. I heard about it from Julie, who still texted me updates. Harrison and Marcus argued constantly now, blaming each other for the vendor issues, the client complaints, the bank delays. Harrison said Marcus was too soft. Marcus said Harrison was too aggressive. Neither of them mentioned the real problem. They'd pushed me out and lost the operational backbone of the company in the process. They still underestimated Mom. Saw her as a grieving widow who'd stayed quiet out of respect for Dad's memory. They had no idea she'd been waiting, watching, letting them dig their own grave. Then, 2 weeks before the shareholder meeting, Marcus showed up at my house. Alone. No Harrison. No lawyer. Just him, standing on my porch in the cold, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. Can we talk? He asked. I let him in. We sat in my living room, the silence heavy between us. I'm sorry, Marcus said finally. It sounded hollow. Rehearsed. For what, specifically? I asked. He flinched. For the vote. For how we handled it. It was just business, Natalie. Nothing personal. I stared at him. You voted me out of the company Dad built. The company I gave 19 years to. And you're telling me it wasn't personal. He looked at the floor. Harrison said you weren't aggressive enough. That we needed harder leadership to grow. I went along with it. You went along with humiliating me in front of the entire staff, I said quietly. You went along with throwing me out like I was nothing. His jaw tightened. I know, okay? But Natalie, the meeting is happening whether we like it or not. Mom's not backing down. If you just what? I interrupted. Save you. He met my eyes, desperate. Please. I stood up. The meeting happens with or without your permission, Marcus. Mom owns 51%. She always has. December 20th arrived cold and gray. The conference room at the company headquarters was full. Lawyers. Financial advisors. My brothers. Me. And Mom. She sat at the head of the table, exactly where Dad used to sit. She looked calm. Unshakable. Deadly calm. Harrison's lawyer shuffled papers nervously. Marcus stared at his hands. I sat across from them, my heart pounding but my face neutral. Mom adjusted her reading glasses and opened the folder in front of her. The room was silent. Every person present understood that something significant was about to happen. They just didn't know what. Mom looked up, meeting Harrison's eyes first, then Marcus's. Gentlemen, she said, her voice clear and firm. Let's talk about control. Mom slid copies of the shareholder agreement across the table. Harrison grabbed his copy immediately, flipping through it with increasing panic. Marcus's face went pale as he read. As you'll see on page 7, Mom continued, I hold 51% ownership of this company. I have held it since your father's death. I never relinquished control. I simply allowed you to operate under the assumption that power was equally distributed. Harrison's lawyer leaned over, whispering urgently. Harrison's face turned red. You let us think. I let you reveal who you are, Mom said calmly. And you did. Spectacularly. Marcus looked like he'd been punched. Mom, we didn't know. You didn't ask, she interrupted. You assumed. You acted. And now we're here. The room was frozen. The advisors looked stunned. I kept my face carefully neutral, but inside, my heart was racing. Mom folded her hands. I'm proposing a leadership restructuring. Effective immediately. Harrison shot to his feet. You can't do this. I can't. Mom said, not raising her voice. I'm majority shareholder. I have every legal right. This is insane. Harrison shouted. You're going to destroy everything Dad built. No, Mom said, her voice like ice. You already started that process. I'm stopping it. Marcus tried a different approach. Mom, please. We made mistakes, but we can fix this. Just give us time. You've had time, Mom said. You used it poorly. Harrison's lawyer cleared his throat. Mrs. Whitmore, with all due respect, hostile leadership changes can damage company morale and this isn't hostile, Mom said. This is corrective. She turned to me. Every eye in the room followed. My brothers stared. The lawyers stared. I felt the weight of the moment pressing down on me. Natalie, Mom said, are you willing to return to this company, not as an employee, but as leadership? I took a breath. Paused. Let the silence stretch. Then I spoke. Yes, I said. But on my terms. Mom nodded. Go ahead. I looked at my brothers. At the lawyers. At the advisors who'd watched me get escorted out weeks ago. Transparency, I said. Every major decision goes through proper channels. No more backroom deals or shortcuts. Harrison started to protest. I kept talking. Stability. We rebuild relationships with clients and vendors before we chase expansion. We earn trust back. Marcus looked down. And respect, I finished. This company runs on structure, not egos. Everyone, including family, answers to the same standards. No exceptions. The room was silent. Mom turned to my brothers. You have a choice, she said. You can stay under these conditions and prove you're capable of learning. Or you can walk away. Harrison's face was purple with rage. Marcus looked defeated. The power dynamic had flipped completely. And there was nothing they could do about it. Harrison stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly. This is ridiculous. I'm not staying here to be humiliated. Then leave, Mom said simply. He stared at her, waiting for her to back down. She didn't. Finally, he grabbed his briefcase and stormed out, slamming the door behind him. The room exhaled collectively. Marcus stayed in his seat, pale and silent. Marcus, Mom prompted. He looked up at her, then at me. I'll stay, he said quietly. But I need to learn how to do this right. I studied him. He looked genuinely broken, humbled in a way I'd never seen. Then you'll start small, I said. Accountable. You'll earn your way back up. He nodded. Mom closed her folder. This meeting is adjourned. Natalie, I'll need you in the office tomorrow to begin the transition. I nodded, my heart pounding. It was done. The company was safe. And the staff was about to find out everything. The announcement went out the next morning. Leadership realignment at Whitmore Manufacturing. No scandal. No drama. Just a carefully worded statement explaining that Natalie Whitmore was returning as Chief Operating Officer, reporting directly to majority shareholder Charlotte Whitmore. Harrison Whitmore had resigned to pursue other opportunities. Marcus Whitmore remained in an advisory capacity. The office buzzed. People whispered in hallways, traded theories in the break room. But there was also relief. Julie hugged me when I walked in. Tom from logistics shook my hand, grinning. Thank God, he said. We thought the place was going to fall apart. I smiled. Not on my watch. By the end of the week, 3 clients who'd been hesitating renewed their contracts. 2 vendors reached out to renegotiate terms. The companies slowly began to breathe again. And my brothers? Harrison disappeared from public view. Marcus showed up to work every day, quiet and subdued, doing exactly what he was told. Within a month, the numbers started to recover. Stability brought trust. Trust brought business back. Clients who'd been nervous about the new direction relaxed when they saw me in leadership again. Vendors appreciated the return to Dad's principles: fair pricing, quality materials, honest timelines. The bank, seeing the leadership change and the improving client relationships, approved a modified loan. Smaller, smarter, sustainable. We didn't chase Harrison's aggressive expansion. We focused on doing what we did well, consistently. The staff morale improved. People stopped whispering. Started smiling again. By February, we'd recovered most of the ground my brothers had lost. Then, one afternoon, Marcus knocked on my office door. He looked nervous, hesitant. "Can I talk to you?" he asked. I gestured to the chair. He sat, hands folded. "I want to prove I can do this," he said. "I want a real role. Not advisory. Actual responsibility." I studied him carefully. "Why should I trust you?" I asked. Marcus swallowed hard. "Because I know what I lost. I know what I did wrong. And I'm willing to work for it this time." I leaned back in my chair. "Small," I said. "Accountable. Earned." "I know," he said. "I'm ready." I gave him a project. Vendor relationship management. Important, but not critical. Something he could handle without damaging the company if he failed. He took it seriously. Checked in regularly. Asked questions. Admitted when he didn't know something. It was strange, watching him struggle with humility. He'd always been the confident one, the charismatic one. Now he was learning what Dad had tried to teach him years ago. Leadership isn't about dominance. It's about service. Mom watched everything. She didn't interfere, but I saw her taking notes, observing how Marcus responded to structure. One evening, she pulled me aside. "You're doing well," she said. "But don't soften too soon. Power tests character. His and yours." By spring, the company was stable. Profitable. Respected again. The staff trusted the leadership. Clients renewed contracts without hesitation. We'd rebuilt what my brothers had nearly destroyed. Then Mom scheduled another shareholder meeting. My stomach tightened when I got the notice. "What's this about?" I asked her. She smiled. "Confirmation," she said. "It's time to make things official. Permanent." The meeting was smaller this time. Just family. Mom. Me. Marcus. Harrison had been invited but didn't respond. We sat in the same conference room where everything had changed months before. Mom opened the folder in front of her. "I'm proposing a formal vote," she said, "to permanently establish Natalie as Chief Operating Officer with full operational authority, and to codify Marcus's role as Vendor Relations Manager, pending continued performance." Marcus nodded immediately. "I vote yes," he said quietly. Mom looked at me. "Natalie." "Yes," I said. She smiled. Then it settled. After the meeting, Marcus lingered. "Thank you," he said, "for giving me another chance." I looked at him. "Don't thank me. Prove it was worth it." He nodded and left. Mom stayed behind, gathering her papers slowly. "You handled that well," she said. I sat down beside her. "I keep waiting for it to feel like victory," I admitted. "It just feels like work." She smiled. "That's because real victory isn't dramatic. It's just consequence, playing out the way it should." We sat in comfortable silence. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a worn leather notebook. Dad's notebook. I recognized it immediately. He'd carried it everywhere, scribbling notes and ideas in cramped handwriting. "He wanted you to have this," Mom said, sliding it across the table. My throat tightened. "When?" "Before he died," she said. "He told me if anything ever happened, this goes to you." I opened it carefully. The pages were filled with observations, strategies, reflections. And on the last page, in Dad's familiar scrawl, one line, asterisk, "Your mother always knew who should lead." Asterisk. I closed the notebook, tears stinging my eyes. "He knew," I whispered. Mom nodded. "He always knew. And he trusted me to make sure it happened when the time was right." I looked at her, this quiet, steady woman who'd built a company beside her husband, who'd let her sons think they'd won, who'd waited patiently for the perfect moment to correct their arrogance. "Why didn't you just tell them from the beginning?" I asked. She smiled sadly. "Because they needed to learn what happens when you assume power instead of earning it. Harrison still hasn't learned. But Marcus might." I looked down at the notebook again. "Thank you, Mom." She squeezed my hand. "You earned this, Natalie. Not because you're my daughter. Because you're the one who actually cares about what your father built." We left the office together, the notebook tucked under my arm. The company was safe. The staff was thriving. And I'd never raised my voice once. The following months were quiet. No drama. No explosions. Just steady, consistent growth. Harrison never returned. I heard through family gossip that he'd started his own consulting firm. It wasn't doing well. Marcus continued to improve. Slowly. Carefully. He'd never be the leader Harrison had tried to be, but he was becoming something better, reliable, honest, humble. The clients who'd left during the chaos started coming back. One by one, they'd call, ask questions, test the waters. Then they'd sign new contracts. Longer ones. By summer, we'd exceeded Dad's best year. Mom came to the office less frequently, trusting me to handle things. But when she did visit, she'd walk through the floor, talking to staff, checking in. People loved her, respected her. One afternoon, she stopped by my office. "I'm transferring my shares to you," she said simply. I froze. "Mom, you've proven yourself," she said. "This company is yours now. Officially." I didn't know what to say. She smiled and left before I could find the words. A year after the vote that tried to destroy me, I sat at Dad's old desk, my desk now, and looked out over the production floor. The machines hummed. The staff moved with purpose. The phones rang with new orders. Everything Dad had built was not just alive. It was thriving. Marcus knocked and entered, holding a report. "Vendor renewals are up 18%, he said. "And 3 new clients signed this week." I nodded. "Good work." He smiled, genuinely, and left. I opened Dad's notebook, reading that final line again. "Your mother always knew who should lead, and she'd been right. Not because I was perfect. Not because I'd never made mistakes. But because I understood what my brothers never had. This company wasn't about power. It was about people. It was about honoring the work, the relationships, the legacy. My brothers had voted me out because they saw leadership as control. They'd forgotten that real leadership is service. And in forgetting that, they'd lost everything." I closed the notebook and got back to work.